for or advocate against the bill. The format I want to explain briefly, just so everyone understands how this works, is those who are for the bill, they will speak first, and they will have a total speaking time of 75 minutes. And then those who are speaking against the bill will have a total time of 90 minutes. And then the last 15 minutes will go back to those who are speaking for the bill. So both sides will have a total of 90 minutes. Now, as far as the senators, what we have agreed and what we did in a past pro-life hearing was basically this. If those who are speaking for the bill, after they get finished, I will ask if anyone wants to ask a question. By agreement, we understand that if this question comes from this side to someone who's speaking for the bill, the clock it's just you can't run out someone else's time by cross-examining them. And it works vice versa. When those opposed to the bill are speaking, if someone on this side asks a question, the clock is paused while the question have an opportunity to speak. So with that, we will get started. The first person to speak in favor of S323 is Steve Crampton. Mr. Crampton, if you'd come forward and give us briefly your credentials before you present. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity. And we're glad to see that the government shutdown has not affected y'all here yet.
Speak into the mic a little bit.
Yes, sir. My name again is Steve Crampton. I serve as senior counsel to the Thomas More Society, a public interest law firm championing life, family, and freedom. I've practiced law for over 40 years, specialized in constitutional law in both state and federal courts for over 32 years. Admitted to practice in 3 different states, several federal district courts, most federal courts of appeal, and the United States Supreme Court. I've assisted in drafting and defending both state legislatures and the U.S. Congress. And I am currently engaged in full-time pro-life litigation and assisting in legislation all across the country, including here in South Carolina, from the lowest state trial courts to state Supreme Courts to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, as to this particular bill, Senate Bill 323, the care and protection of the most vulnerable among us is perhaps the truest test of a civilized society. This bill extends the equal protection of the laws to the unborn, who are, in fact, the most innocent and most vulnerable members of our society. In fact, even back as far as our nation's charter and the Declaration of Independence, the first duty of the state is decreed as to protect life. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is to protect and preserve these rights, to secure these rights, that the government is instituted among men. So I applaud this committee for undertaking this project and look forward to its eventual passage. First on the legal agenda is the constitutionality of what this committee is undertaking. And I am here to assure you that there is nothing in federal law that prohibits this state from moving forward on this kind of bill. Since the Dobbs against Jackson Women's Health Organization decision in 2022, which, as y'all know, overturned Roe against Wade, there is no impediment whatsoever in federal law. While the Dobbs decision did not explicitly declare the personhood of the unborn, it certainly opened the way for states like South Carolina to do so, virtually inviting legislation like Senate Bill 323. And as we sit here today, several other states have recognized the personhood of the unborn in one form or another. Perhaps as many as 17 have established rights for the unborn either by statute or by judicial decree, and some 24 different states contain personhood language protecting the life of the unborn in their abortion laws, as SB 323 will do. And this is, in fact, as it should be. Historically, our laws did provide protection for the unborn to the same extent as to born children. It was only really with the advent of the abortion industry that courts began to reconsider and efforts were made to render the unborn non-persons under the law. In fact, as recently as 1968, only 5 years before the decision of the court in Roe against Wade, the U.S. Supreme Court held that the Equal Protection Clause applied to illegitimate children because, listen to the language of the court, they are not non-persons. After all, they are humans, alive, and have their being. Those criteria apply equally to the unborn here today. So, Senate Bill 323 is not some far-out extension of the law that's never been undertaken before. In fact, it is a restoration of the common sense undertaking that extends the protection of the law to children in the womb, unborn. They happen to be, to this day, in most states, still the only class of human beings the law has failed to protect. Moreover, South Carolina, like many other states, have long recognized the unborn as persons in other areas of the law. Consider inheritance laws, for example, fetal homicide laws, child endangerment, and so on. So again, SB 323 is not some new radical undertaking. Now, I want to address in particular some of the criticisms and concerns that have been raised, and note for the record that many of the comments this morning as we sat through the public comment time seemed to suggest a great deal of misunderstanding about what this bill does and doesn't do. In particular, there is some concern raised by even other pro-life groups that holding mothers accountable for their part in aborting their own unborn children is somehow an egregious wrong. I would respectfully suggest that it is in fact just and logical to extend the full protection of the law to the unborn, especially in a day like we find ourselves today, where abortion is no longer only rendered in an abortion clinic or facility. In fact, mothers all over the land now have access to chemical abortions, abortifacients, and can conduct abortions in their own home. If we fail to extend the protection of the law to the unborn as it pertains to mothers, then you really have an unequal protection of the unborn across the board. Only those who are taken to an abortion clinic are protected. Those who remain at home and let the mother proceed are left unprotected. That is unjust, and it is frankly a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. So, while we certainly concur that there are many mothers who end up aborting their children as a result of being coerced, being perhaps even lied to, being threatened physically with harm and have then no choice. To impose a blanket immunity to all mothers because some are coerced is itself illogical and again unprincipled here. So our position here, and this bill I think advances this cause in the following way. Mothers are rendered culpable for their own acts. However, there is immunity granted when they cooperate with the prosecution. And of course, extenuating circumstances, such as coercion, can always be addressed both with the solicitors and in a court of law. Furthermore, the bill explicitly allows the defense in the event they suffer threats of physical harm. So there is abundant provision for the due process, really, to play out for mothers who are accused in the context of aborting their own children. And I would suggest to this committee that to treat the mothers as always vulnerable, always coerced, or really unable to resist the participation in the abortion is really a throwback to the time when women were denied citizenship almost altogether. They were entirely dependent on their parents. There is a paternalistic quality to the notion that all women should be immunized from this bill that is simply outdated. It should not be the law. I think SB 323 does a very fine job of striking the balance and allowing defenses while not granting immunity forever. Moreover, there is, I think, a gross misrepresentation, gross misunderstanding in this bill with respect to the accusation that mothers would somehow face the death penalty. Nothing could be further from the truth. This bill explicitly provides that the maximum penalty is 30 years imprisonment. Moreover, the section right before that section in this bill states that in the event of inconsistencies, contradictions between this bill and any other legislation, the provisions of this law shall prevail. So to the extent anyone attempts to prosecute a mother for capital murder, they would be immediately stopped under that provision. SB 323 prevails. And remember that that's only up to 30 years. The fact is there is no minimum penalty imposed here. So it could be, in many cases, mothers face no jail time whatsoever. Again, there is much testimony and concern with respect to this bill's failure to provide a rape and incest exception. Again, I would refer this and dignity that born children and adults enjoy is the fundamental premise here. Consequently, that a woman suffers an egregious harm at the hands of a relative or at a stranger who perhaps has raped her is a terrible wrong, no question about it, and that should be addressed. But you do not punish the child for the sins of the parent. The father is the wrongdoer, not the child. You do not execute the child for the rape committed by the father. So this bill, again, I think rightly divides the situation and sets forth the law that applies across the board. We honor life, we protect life in the womb. Another objection has been raised with regard to when the woman's life is in danger. In fact, this bill incorporates pretty much the exact language that is already in law in South Carolina with regard to medical emergency language. So gross misunderstandings have been exhibited in the testimony this morning. The fact is, we respect, and again, under this bill, that medical emergencies occur. You can't identify every single medical situation, but the doctors are protected when they render emergency assistance. Another point raised by some of the commentators is the lack of confidentiality, the breach of confidentiality. For instance, between the patient and the physician, or perhaps between the counselor and the client. While it is true that the law in this case, as in many other cases, does sometimes pierce that veil, if you will, I would refer this committee to the existing mandatory reporter laws in South Carolina. As it stands here today, without regard to the passage of SB 323, mandatory reporting is required. Finally, before I close, I want to just touch on the notion of contraceptives being somehow impacted by this bill, and likewise in vitro fertilization. Once again, I would argue those are red herrings here. Pregnancy is clinically diagnosable. That is after most contraceptives operate and doesn't touch IVF. So those concerns are once again illusory. For these reasons and many others, I would urge this committee to move forward on this bill. It is indeed groundbreaking in some respects, but only in the respect of affording due respect and dignity to the unborn. Let me close with this. Martin Luther King Jr., in his letter to from a Birmingham jail, noted that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. He says, I have yet to engage in a direct action campaign that was well-timed in the view of those who have not. Justice too long delayed is justice denied. Justice for the unborn has been too long delayed. Thank you. I'm happy to answer questions.
Senator from Lawrenceburg. And by rule, we're going to turn the clock off for
Clock pauses.
Okay. Thank you for being here. You said you were licensed to practice in 3 states, or is South Carolina one of those?
It is not, sir.
Okay. Would
Excuse me. Outbursts will not be tolerated. No clapping, no laughing. You will be addressed by security.
If she intentionally undertakes to kill her unborn child, she may be exposed to punishment under this bill.
So the answer is yes. I mean, let's not mince words. If she takes the morning after pill, she's subject to a 30-year felony.
Well, when you say the morning after pill, let me clarify.
Okay.
Literally, the morning after would be before clinically diagnosable pregnancy, in which case she would not be subject. The term is loosely applied sometimes when she's 7 weeks along as well. So there's a timing issue in that question.
All right, so you're opposed to us changing it from diagnosable pregnancy to fertilization?
I didn't say that.
Well, okay, let's say that amendment comes up. Would then the woman who takes the morning after pill be subject to a 30-year felony?
In all likelihood, yes.
Okay. And are IUDs outlawed by this bill?
I do not believe so.
If we changed it to fertilization, would IUDs be outlawed by this bill?
Perhaps.
Okay. You talked about the aiding and abetting, and it says specifically in here that if you give information to a woman knowing that the information will be used or is reasonably likely to be used, you could be charged with aiding and abetting, right?
Correct.
Would there be any reason to give somebody information if you didn't intend them to use it?
Absolutely.
Why would that be?
One of the witnesses this morning testifying against the bill indicated that she may engage in teaching of folks about abortion practices. A teaching sort of undertaking in that academic sense would not be one that would be reasonably likely to result in an imminent abortion, I would suggest.
All right. So are you aware that my wife is a doctor?
No, sir.
All right. You know that when pregnant young girls come to her, she tries to counsel them and say, young lady, you've got several options, and I urge you to talk to your family about this, but right now you're talking to me. And one option would be you can have this child and you can raise this child, or your family can raise this child. And another option would be that you could put this child up for adoption. And another option might be that you would seek an abortion. Has my wife just committed a crime if she says those words?
Well, I would suggest that the circumstances there might result in further investigation by a prosecutor. I would suggest no. Under my read of this bill, no.
All right, but you just said to me that if my wife tells her that the third option might be an abortion, that some law enforcement officer could come storming in her office and put her in handcuffs and start questioning her?
No,
Is that
that's
what you're
not,
telling
that's
me?
not at all what I said, sir.
Okay, we'll skip the handcuffs part. Can they come in and start questioning her?
It's conceivable.
You think they would and should?
No, I didn't say that at all.
Okay. You didn't say that at all. I didn't ask you if you said that. I asked you if you think that.
Well, I would actually probably say no. I do not think so.
Okay. So do you agree that this bill criminalizes the practice of medicine?
No. This bill criminalizes the killing of an innocent unborn child
But it's the doctor that would go to jail.
in many cases.
Why is women?
I think you're mistaken in that assumption, sir.
It says right here, this section will not apply to a pharmacist or a manufacturer of drugs.
That does so in the usual and customary course of business, basically, and where the drug is not intentionally and solely for use in abortion.
All right, so you're saying that this bill will criminalize manufacturers of the morning after pill.
I don't know that that's the case.
Well, is there any other reason to be promoting the sale of that bill other than you are offering women an option of how to end their pregnancy?
Well, we just discussed, sir, that morning after, if it's literally the morning after, this bill would not criminalize that behavior, and therefore there's a legitimate use for that manufacturer.
So if it's taken after, literally after the morning after, then the manufacturers and the pharmacists are subject to the 30-year felony as well?
Again, no, sir, because
No,
if
because we care more about pharmacists and manufacturers than we do about women, right?
I think that's wrong.
Thank you for being here.
Okay. Are there other questions from any member of the committee? Senator from, sorry, where are you from?
Berkeley.
Berkeley.
Just a real simple question. You mentioned a 1968 case that you says extends to the children in the womb.
Yes, sir.
What case is that?
That's not actually to the children in the womb. I was quoting that case for the proposition that the Supreme Court recognized the notion of what constitutes a person. And that case is, one second here, it's Livy against Louisiana, 1968. Levy, L-E-V-Y.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I have a question.
Can we ask one more?
Well, I'm going to ask one. Doctor, I know that there's a lot that's been thrown at you, but getting back to the definition in the bill of what abortion is, it's your understanding, in fact, the bill says that it's that which is intended to terminate the pregnancy after it is clinically diagnosable. Is that not what it reads? And so
That's exactly what it reads.
there are no birth control methods that terminate after a clinically diagnosable pregnancy. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding,
Isn't it
sir.
the case that the ones that terminate after clinically diagnosable pregnancy are what we refer to as RU486?
Correct.
Mifepristone, misoprostol? Is that
Correct.
the way you understand it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions?
How does this bill affect in vitro fertilization?
I would argue that it does not, for the very same reason, because it only applies once a clinically diagnosable pregnancy has been diagnosed.
All right, so if a woman chooses to pursue in vitro fertilization and at the clinic they fertilize 10 eggs with the expectation, not knowing how many it may take before she actually has children, then the ones that remain in the care of the clinician, if the family decides they've had 2 children, they don't need to use the other eggs, then there's no problem with that within the doctor's office?
That's my read of this bill, yes, sir.
Are there any other questions? Senator from Sumter.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up to Senator from Orangeburg. So just on the IVF question, so the line of questioning is, does it apply to in vitro fertilization? If there's, on that scenario, say there's 10 eggs that are fertilized, 4 of them are being suspended and cryogenically
I do not think it is under this bill as
But
drafted.
isn't it not a fertilized egg, and is that not conception?
It may be conception, it's not a clinically diagnosable pregnancy. This bill does define conception, but that's a separate provision.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crampton. All right, the next witness will be Dr. Tom Kendall.
I am Tom Kendall, the husband of Jan Kendall after 52 years of marriage. She has had 11 pregnancies, and we have 7 living children, and at this time 40 grandchildren. I am a practicing physician, family practice in Greenville, South Carolina. With thanks to Senator Verdon and Cash for this opportunity to engage in this intense controversy, I do so with the intention to highlight 3 things. The first, the nature and cause of this debate. Secondly, my perspective and motivation for changing my medical schedule today to be here. And thirdly, to provide an ultimate resolution to influence the advance of this bill. First, the nature and cause of this debate. Why are we here? This is a challenge to a contemporary cultural conclusion that the conceptus, the being, the material, the thing, the baby, present in the uterus is not a human and can be disposed of by surgical or medical means, or that it is a human and it can still be disposed of. The reason for this conclusion is summed up by the maxim by Cornelius Van Til, who states, "Culture is religion externalized." I'm here today to defend the reality that we are indeed proposing protection for humankind, for personhood. Secondly, my perspective and motivation for being here. I'm a Christian by faith, embracing the historical doctrines of the Holy Scripture, whereby the being, nature, character, and works of the eternal triune God are revealed. These works include the creation of time, space, matter, and energy. Upon completion of the cosmos, with plant and animal life in place, the Creator said, "Let us make man in our image." And he did. Male and female, with the capability to be fruitful and multiply. In that magnificent design of creative wonder, we have cause to understand the biology of the genetic framework of living things. Each distinct union of unique DNA underscores the masterpiece of supernatural divine wisdom. Why am I here? To give witness to the reality of this truth. 50 years ago, I was given the privilege to enter medical school. 1 year later, 1973, Roe versus Wade became a federal law. Now the states have jurisdiction. It's up to us now. After my residency, I went to one of the surgical abortion clinics in Greenville, South Carolina, and spoke with the doctor, one with whom I trained. I asked him to consider changing his attitude and to stop performing abortion. He said to me, "My God has not told me it's wrong." I conclude therein is the reason we are here today. I am on the board of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, origin in 1943, now in its 83rd year. And a board member, friend, anesthesiologist, and mentor, died at 92, taught me a significant insight. He said to me, "Tom, you and I are biologists. We know what an ovum and a sperm are. Don't fall for the argument that life begins at conception. No, life began in Eden." When he said that, I began to realize that this is the very essence of the battle. It's about God. My motivation, therefore, is to defend the truth about life, who gives it, and do what is necessary to defend and preserve creatures made in the image of God. Third, and finally, how to resolve this debate, this controversy. The look of things is not always the truth of things, but the truth of things changes the look of things. And the thought of a medical doctor performing an abortion was unconscionable. Now the winds of modern philosophy and cultural morality have shifted. It is well known in medicine today that a correct diagnosis is essential for proper management of disease and prognosis. How does that apply to this dilemma that we're facing today? This bill harms no one. It provides we cannot change the terms. Life, law, love, all come together, standing in opposition to a culture of death, lawlessness, and hate.
All right, does anyone have a question for Dr. Kendall? Senator from Marlborough.
Life begins with the fertilization of the egg.
I know what an ovum and a sperm are,
Well, I do too, but I ask you a question.
and I believe that you know the answer.
The answer is yes. A pregnant woman or a woman who's become pregnant and takes the morning after pill should be subjected to a 30-year felony.
Senator Hutto, if the pregnancy has been determined, in other words, from this, I'm the medical opinion.
Right, but what I hear you saying is ignorance is bliss. As long as the woman says, "I didn't know," it's okay.
Truth sets us free.
Okay. Okay.
In regard to the wrong use of medicine, yes.
What is your opinion on what this bill does for in vitro fertilization?
I don't think it addresses that. I don't think that's included.
Okay. So what the senator from Sumter and I were talking about, if 10 eggs are fertilized and the family only uses 4 of them, then the clinic that retains the other 6 does not violate this law by doing whatever they do to dispose of those.
Violating that law by terminating a pregnancy,
Well, they're not
I don't
pregnant,
think it-
they're just
I don't
fertilized
I don't
eggs
think it
sitting in a
involves that.
refrigerator or freezer.
that's not what this bill addresses.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for Dr. Kendall? All right. Thank you very much. The next presenter will be Dr. Faith Daggs.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for asking me to come to testify, Mr. Chairman. And to tell you a little about myself, my name is Faith Daggs. I am a board-certified OBGYN and have been in practice since graduating from my residency program at Georgetown University. I also trained in medicine and received my medical degree from Georgetown University, where I was honored to be inducted to Alpha Omega Alpha, which is Medical Honor Society, and to receive the American Medical Women's Award as highest female in my graduating class, or that honor. I practice medicine in both North Carolina and South Carolina, and am licensed in both states. I've been previously licensed in the state of Pennsylvania and practiced there for 18 years. I currently, I worked in full scope OBGYN for over 20 years. And in the last 5 years, I've served as an OBGYN hospitalist, also known as an OB laborist, in hospitals both in North and South Carolina. Through the course of my practice, I've taken care of thousands of women at all stages of life and at all stages of pregnancy. I have always, since the start of my medical practice with an approach that would be considered pro-life. I do not provide or perform abortions. However, I have taken care of and counseled women about the risks and benefits at wherever when they find themselves pregnant and what their options may be. If I cannot provide that service, I would recommend they transfer to another physician. That being said, when I encounter a patient who is in need of any type of emergent medical care, whether in pregnancy or not pregnancy, I am there to take care of that patient regardless. I am here to testify with respect to SB 323 and the particular provision regarding medical emergencies, those states where a woman in a pregnancy is in a situation that is threatening to her current health, whether a direct threat of life-threatening and or threatening a future disability or morbidity in the long term. I am there to take care of her in that situation. And I've encountered that situation on many occasions. Unfortunately, not every pregnancy is going to go well, although the majority of them do. Some pregnancies will never make it in terms of a miscarriage at various stages of pregnancy. Generally, that's considered prior to 20 weeks. Ectopic pregnancies, pregnancies in the wrong location where they could never survive outside. They could never, they're just not going to be an ongoing normal pregnancy except in very rare circumstances. Pregnancies that seem to be going well and then meet unexpected complications where the baby is clearly living, but what we would call pre-viable, meaning we just don't have the resources to care for that baby outside the womb. And because of that, the woman is bleeding. There's a concern for infection. She's dilating prematurely. She has a severe medical disorder. There's, various medical situations where that pregnancy needs to be discontinued. And by virtue of treating the medical condition, that baby is going to die and not be able to survive, outside the womb because we're just in a condition where we don't have the resources for that. Sometimes that danger is not imminent, but we know because of all the circumstances around, we don't want our patient to get to a place where she's going to be in or a couple or whatever the scenario that pregnant person encounters, as well as the physician to be like, this is what we got to do. But that's how it is because we take care of our patients in all circumstances. I feel that practicing in the state of South Carolina. I was licensed in 2022 and have been practicing privileged in South Carolina hospitals since the spring of 2023. And since the advent of the previous law here in South Carolina and then this current bill, I do not feel it would impede my ability to care for women in medical emergencies and to be able to make, the decision, even if that means termination of a pregnancy because we're in a life-threatening or life-disabling potential situation for that pregnant person should the pregnancy continue. The provisions in this bill give excellent latitude for the medical professional caring for that woman to proceed in the best way without consideration for legal ramifications. If that's you have to take care of the patient in front of you. Because I've always practiced from a pro-life perspective, I knew there were going to be difficult situations, as there always are. Everything is not totally black and white in medicine, and that there's going to be times where, although my goal is always to care for those two patients in front of me, that unborn child and that mother, that pregnant woman, that there's just going to be scenarios where the safest condition is to discontinue the pregnancy. Sometimes that very difficult when it's a pregnancy that's around the edge where maybe there can be help, or when we know there's just no help for this baby, but it's what we have to do. It's the necessary consequence of saving that woman's life or preventing major injury or impairing her health in the future or in the present. And I feel that this bill does not impede my ability to do that. In particular, as an OB hospitalist, that's my job. I meet patients in the hospital. I work at this time primarily in the hospital. I see them on labor and delivery. I see them in the emergency room. So I'm meeting them when they're having a miscarriage, when they're having, I'm having pain. Do I have an ectopic pregnancy? I'm having high blood pressure. Whatever the scenario is, I'm contracting too early. That's a good part of what I do is I meet them in the emergent situation. And because of how I've been trained, I'm there to take the medical facts and recognize these are the potential consequences. This is what can happen in the short term. This is what can happen in the long term. This is the situation we have in front of me. I meet my patient with that, and then
Thank you, Dr. Dykes. At this time, is there anyone who has a question? Senator from Williamsburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Dykes. I really think that I sense the physicians' struggle in what you've shared with us today and the difficult circumstances that doctors find themselves in. And I appreciate the fact that you've concluded, based on your analysis, that the bill does not impede your ability to practice your craft. I'm curious as it relates to other professionals, your friends and neighbors who you interact with. Could you share with me whether or not there is unanimous consent of your fellow physicians in terms of feeling the way that you do when they find themselves in the kind of challenging situations that you've described for this committee?
Yeah, it's hard to speak for others and to know how they would respond to that. It's been my sense that, because as physicians, we seek each other's opinions.
Yes, ma'am.
We very often, I'm going to pick your brain. the most important thing in medicine is to know when you don't know, or to, seek counsel. And that in the times I've encountered this, and most recently in the state of South Carolina, because I practice in both states, that my sense is that my colleagues, their gut is to absolutely take care of the patient, and that we see the reality of the situation, which sometimes is very grim, and we're frustrated because as physicians we can't make it better. We just have to do what's best, and that often we then talk to each other. This is what I think we should do. And so I think my sense is that most physicians know what to do. There is some concern that because they're not trained as attorneys, and that's not what they do primarily, and that they haven't read the legislation themselves, that they may not understand that perspective. But I have not worked in any hospital or healthcare institution that doesn't have attorneys and risk management folks where you can say, literally, you can concern.
And Dr. Daggs, that's a part of what troubles me. What troubles me is that you all are in emergency situations where oftentimes time is of the essence. And so for you to have to worry about the prosecutorial end of what you're involved in, candidly, doctor, that's one of the things that bothers me about this bill.
Right. I think that when situations are emergent, we know exactly what to do, and we do exactly what we need to do immediately. It's more maybe when there's a situation where we are concerned that it could become emergent, then I think those physicians might have that question. When there's an emergency, when there's clearly a risk, like, we're gonna act and we almost instinctually, in terms of our medical training, in terms of ectopic pregnancy, hemorrhage, infection, we're we're gonna act immediately, and then in those cases we know, and there's not a concern for that part of it. We can move, and that's easily recognizable from a medical point of view.
But I would submit, doctor, that a lot of the circumstances are not as clear as the one that you've shared with me, that are what I considered, based on listening to you, reasonably clear. I would submit that there are other situations that are not as clear.
I would submit that those would be situations that probably may not be as immediately life-threatening, or as, that there may be a question of where they're truly imminent in terms of the patient's health and well-being.
All right, let me trouble you with a few more, if you don't mind, please. One would be the fact that persons reviewing what you've done may be law enforcement. Right? They're the ones that will determine whether or not you and or your patient is prosecuted. And they don't even have the requisite knowledge that you've got. How do you feel about the idea of having them to be the judge of whether or not what you've done is consistent with the oath that you've taken and your commitment to your patient to do the best you can to help them and in some instances, their unborn child?
My ultimate duty is to the patient and to the oath that I took to take care of patients, and that I really I wouldn't take that into consideration. Like, if someone is going, I don't, for my.
In terms of what you all have to now think about and consider as you do your job?
I don't believe so. I am going to take care of patients the exact same way, regardless. And I've been taking care of patients, if I include my training period, 30 years now.
Well, I for one, have an appreciation for you and others like you in terms of what you do. Last question, if you don't mind, please, ma'am. You indicated earlier that in a number of situations, but that there are instances where you counsel. And if you conclude in your counseling that the option that the person might want to proceed under when you said that.
Yeah, I would transfer care.
Yes, ma'am. Does it disturb you that there is an element in this bill that may very well criminalize that kind of conduct, in my humble opinion? And I know lawyers might differ on this issue. The gentleman that spoke earlier might differ from me on this, but I practice law too. And I think as I listened to you, and again, I have nothing but an appreciation for what you've shared, it just appears to me as if that may very well meet the criteria, if you will, for aiding and abetting, because you are, in effect, sending somebody someplace where they can get care, and then if it's concluded on the other end that the care that they received is inconsistent with this bill, then suddenly you find yourself in a situation and all you were doing was passing along information because you didn't feel as if you could care for the patient in the manner in which the patient needed the care. Don't you think that's problematic?
I would say, certainly I read the bill. I'm not an attorney. And so my ability to draw conclusions like that, I did not draw that conclusion when I read through the legislation, but you know, I'm not an attorney or a legislator. That, you know, I'm doing the best of my ability. And it was not my understanding from the reading of the bill that that would be a consequence of counseling of patients, of counseling patients, you know, telling the risks and benefits of all their options. So it's not my understanding of the reading of the bill, but, you know,
let me do one more for
so I would not be concerned about that if I felt I was practicing medicine in the best way that I could for that patient. But, you know, certainly there are things that there's, especially, you know, if a patient's in an emergency situation, I'm going to provide them the care that they need to restore them to health. And in some cases that might involve a pregnancy ending with a baby who can't live.
Let me try a hypothetical on you, if I might. Assume hypothetically that counseling in the manner in which you did, and that is having the conversation with the patient, concluding that the care the patient needs to be referred to some other provider. Assume hypothetically that that's violative of the law. Would you then refrain from that counseling, or do you believe that your job requires you to counsel?
As a physician,
Yes, ma'am.
I tell the patients the treatment options that are available and I tell them the risks and benefits. I don't, you know, there are services that I don't perform or refer for, and I would say you need to, you know, seek another person to provide those services. I realize I'm in the minority of OBGYNs, and many of my colleagues decide to provide those services, and that's absolutely their prerogative. I would provide the patient with the medical information about what's available for their care, and from my reading of this, I didn't get that at all. But I don't have a JD. I have an MD.
I understand. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Chair.
I think I had Senator from Charleston next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple follow-up questions, Doctor. Based on the Senator Sapp's questioning, you mentioned, going back to the concern for some of your colleagues that may put them in a position to be prosecuted for what you describe as upholding your oath, the oath that you took to practice medicine. Regardless, that's what you're going to do based on the way you practice medicine. So my question is it not a concern that there are other colleagues and professionals with the same credentials as you that may not agree on every procedure? For example, if by your oath and your training you truly believe that something was an emergency, to do an operation that would perhaps violate this statute, but there are some colleagues that have they opine that it was not an emergency, it was not medically necessary, and so now we're down, which is another concern I have, to basically interpretation of expert witnesses. So who you believe this based on your oath and your training that it was medically necessary, another colleague doesn't. For whatever reason, you get reported, and I understand you're not an attorney, but so forget whether you're guilty or not. If you are charged, just based on the assumption that you violated this law, let me ask, what happens to your medical license if you're charged? You're just charged of a crime. Are you allowed to still practice medicine at that point?
I think in the state of North Carolina, and the Board of Medicine sent me all kinds of stuff when I got licensed, that probably if you're charged, that there might be some restriction on your full practice of medicine. But to be honest, I do not know all the rules and regulations. That wouldn't surprise me, just having been credentialed at several, and just going through the licensing process. You always have to report, all of those things to the medical board. So, that,
And this is this would be a felony. So you're charged with the felony, and so would it surprise you that you probably lose your license or at least be suspended?
Yeah.
And during that interim, do you not think it's a concern to other medical professionals, your colleagues, that at that point, now you can't practice medicine, you can't uphold the oath, you can't save the lives that you were intending to save, you can't provide for your family, pending however long this takes. And in South Carolina, it takes a long time for these things to happen. And so, is that not a legitimate concern amongst the medical professionals?
I haven't had colleagues speak to me about that and say that was their, concern personally. So I don't know what's on the mind of my colleagues. In general, the sense of the physicians that I work with is that we all take care of women. Emergencies happen. We hope that it's not when we're on shift, but it does. And we take care of it. And that in particular, in OBGYN, there's often dicey situations, but it's usually quite clear cut when a pregnancy needs to be ended, whether it's at 37 weeks or it's 19 weeks, and there's a life-threatening situation for that mom, and baby, or baby. It's kind of either or. But, the baby depends on the mom. And if the mom's unwell, she's got to be taken care of. So I have to honestly say I haven't had those conversations with colleagues. But I think most times when there's emergency, exactly what you need to do. And everybody kind of hops to it.
We hope so.
Yeah. Thank you.
You still want to? Okay, Senator from Orangeburg.
Thank you, Dr. Daggs. Did you know that we share the distinction of going to a fine university? Because I graduated Georgetown as well. If a patient of yours calls your office and you find out they've been raped, is that an emergency situation such that you'd give them an appointment right away?
Yeah, I would be concerned for her health. Yes.
And do you understand that if you counseled her on the possibility of taking the morning after pill, that you might be committing a crime?
That's not my understanding from the reading of this bill, because at that point you don't know if the patient is pregnant yet, and there hasn't been a pregnancy identifiable. The morning after pill, the goal of the morning after pill is to disrupt ovulation, and so and really that's even a challenging thing to know unless you can get some pretty good turnaround on hormone tests where the woman is in her cycle. So it's the intent of the morning after pill is to be a contraceptive in that to prevent conception, by preventing ovulation, by disrupting that hormonal process.
But isn't it a standard medical practice in South Carolina that rape victims are counseled about the possibility of taking the morning after pill?
I have not myself conducted like a rape kit or a rape evaluation. Just those tend to be at particular designated medical centers. So I have not done that, and I haven't been trained in that process. But
That's why I was asking.
Yeah,
because I'm
that's a good
assuming
question.
They're coming in,
They're
to the hospital. They've got
Okay.
the rape kit done.
Okay.
They're calling you in your office a day or two later after things have sort of settled down and go, I want to talk to my doctor about this, being you, okay? And they come in and talk to you. And
Right.
It's not
in that scenario, absolutely, I would see that patient. I would try and determine, to the best of my knowledge, and what's available to us with medical testing. And there are some things you can get pretty quick turnaround. If she's actually even at risk for pregnancy, based on where she is in her cycle, knowing, just there's a short window of time, approximately 5 to 6 days, where a woman is potentially fertile and can conceive, whether pregnancy is likely, whether she would benefit from taking the morning after pill to delay ovulation or to abrupt ovulation within that cycle to mitigate the risk of conceiving in that cycle.
okay. So the benefit of the morning after pill is to prevent the pregnancy.
It's basically to be contraceptive, yes, yeah.
Okay. And so how long does a rape victim's ability to decide what to do, how long is that still considered within the emergency situation?
Gosh, I can't say that for certain, and because the other,
So she really just didn't have the ability to get to your office until 8 days later. You think at that point in time, if you talked to her about the morning after pill, you'd be committing a crime?
That's not my understanding from how I read this
About
bill.
9 days later, 10 days later, at some point in time, she comes in, she's been raped, and she asks you what her options are.
Well, we can do a pregnancy test.
Right. And if you determine that she is pregnant and she tells you she wants to have an abortion, and the law says that you can be charged with aiding and abetting for making a referral to an abortion provider, are you committing a crime?
I don't refer for abortion. I would talk to the woman about the risks and benefits of the medical options out there. I would probably say in the state of North Carolina, that's not something, with the current law, it's probably wouldn't be prohibitive, but I guess potentially would be with this law.
Right.
From my understanding, but
so
I can't, as I said, I read through the legislature, through the bill, and so my ability to, process all the legal stuff, I was also post-call. So,
I understand.
my brain.
So basically what you would tell a person if this law passed, come see me in my North Carolina office.
Not necessarily. I would,
But if you were in your North Carolina office, you could give her more options than you could in South Carolina.
I don't know if that's my understanding, and probably I would try and find out where she is, and if that was, something that she desired, I would say there's lots of folks out there,
Okay.
and I would try and help her, like you said your wife would.
How about just, there's lots of folks out there. Isn't that a referral to somebody who will do this procedure that I won't do?
That's not a referral.
It's not?
A referral is arrangement of care from a medical perspective.
All right, so if she asked you, as my trusted doctor, is there a doctor in North Carolina you would recommend?
I would say that I don't recommend or refer for abortion.
Right, but you recommend to other doctors you know might perform an abortion.
I would say there's many providers who provide that service. I probably wouldn't directly send her. I would not directly send her.
Right, but you would send her to a doctor you knew would send her.
No, I would not.
Okay.
Has never been my practice.
Is it absolutely medically clear when a woman is having a miscarriage or not? Or is that a process by which they might be miscarrying, they might not be miscarrying?
We need to have an assessment over time to see changes in HCG. Sometimes it is clear when she presents for care, in terms of what's happening symptomatically. We have an ultrasound, so it can be medically clear.
And what is a DNC?
A dilation and curettage.
And is that something that is performed sometimes when women are having miscarriage?
Absolutely.
Is that something you do?
Yes.
All right. And so is that done because you are declaring that an emergency?
In some cases, yes, not in all.
All right. So if you do it in the context when it's not an emergency, are you committing a crime?
No,
Okay.
because a pregnancy has already stopped growing and it's a miscarriage.
Well, I thought we just said that you didn't know for sure that it was a miscarriage.
That's not what I said. So we can diagnose what we call a missed abortion, which is when the patient hasn't started bleeding yet, but we can see that on ultrasound, and we have accurate dating of pregnancy by serum pregnancy tests, last menstrual period. There's a gestational sac. We can see a fetal pole, and there's no heartbeat. There's thresholds where we know we should be seeing those based on the size of the gestational sac, the size of the fetal pole. So I can diagnose what's called a missed miscarriage. Another name for that is a missed abortion. And so that's not the same as an elective abortion where a patient, decides to terminate a pregnancy. Some women, when they've had a missed miscarriage, their body hasn't started to cramp or bleed yet, I will offer her options: expectant management. Let's see if nature takes its course and you spontaneously miscarry. Medical management, if she's under a certain gestational age, using medication to help her body start that process to miscarry, or surgical management, and that would be a DNC. And sometimes we offer that procedure while she's in the midst of losing a pregnancy, because maybe she's bleeding excessively, and we're concerned that things are going to go south before her body completes the process on its own.
If you prescribe medication to enhance the miscarriage, are the chances of miscarriage, you're saying this bill won't have there's no problem with that?
No.
Okay.
No.
And you hear stories where a woman comes in and they say, you're bleeding, but you're not really bleeding enough. Go sit out in the car, and when it gets worse, come on back in, because it's not really an emergency yet, but you're on the verge of an emergency. What do you do in cases like that?
That's poor medical judgment, and in my case, medical malpractice. Like that if you can clearly tell this is a miscarriage, then if there's no fetal pole, or you have there's no heart, like,
Well, I'm talking about just bleeding.
There can be up to 10 to 15% of pregnancies. You can have what's called a threatened miscarriage, where that woman is having some spotting, is not, but if I have a patient who's significantly bleeding, her cervix is open, like, that's probably a miscarriage in progress. We can have lots of potential scenarios, but it's generally pretty straightforward to diagnose when a woman is losing a pregnancy.
And is that an emergency?
It can be if she's bleeding excessively. And sometimes someone's bleeding and their body has almost finished the process, and she may be a candidate for medical management and may not require surgery.
I'm just going to try and get at this one.
Sorry.
Do you have to measure the amount of blood? What's excessive bleeding? I mean, it seems to me that if you're bleeding and you're in a doctor's office and you're having problems that...
So if the patient is clinically symptomatic, or there's concern for that, if she has an abnormal hemoglobin level, so, she's anemic, if she is, on clinical exam, there's significant amount of blood flow there. So there can be degrees of bleeding where if it is a reliable patient, it is safe to allow her to leave your office or leave the hospital with absolutely scheduled close clinical follow-up, whether that's the next day or, strict recommendations that, if XYZ is going on, return to the hospital or return to my office.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions?
Mr. Chairman, sorry. Thank you, Senator. Just real
Senator
quick.
from Sumter.
And thank you for being here. I do apologize. I stepped out for a minute, so I didn't hear all the question and answers from the senator from Orangeburg. I just want to ask a clarifying question. I came back into the conversation. You mentioned, that you don't refer abortion. I respect that position. I just want to also walk through a hypothetical situation here and to find out sort of what your opinion is on what would be considered violation of this law or this bill if it were to pass into law. So to further the senator from Orangeburg's line, if, say, a young woman comes in pregnant and, in a tragic situation, whether it be rape, incest, or whatever, and ask you, obviously you're giving her the care that she needs in that moment, and she asks you, what are my options? And you espouse, here's your menu of options. Would obviously abortion would not be one of those. Is that accurate?
I would let her know that this is what is medically available. Okay. These are the services that I provide. This is a service I can't provide. There are many medical professionals who, if you desire that service, can provide that service. If we're in the state of South Carolina, I would say you should know that some of these services are considered illegal,
Okay.
from my understanding from the law in South Carolina, I guess.
Because you get right to the crux of my question here, and that is, at what point would you consider your conversation with her aiding and abetting? Suppose this young lady does seek out an abortion, and you have a colleague that overheard you just simply stating the fact that there are providers available to her to offer that service, and would you consider that an aid or abetment of that particular process?
Not being in law enforcement and not being an attorney, I really wouldn't think about the idea of aiding and abetting. So
Okay.
I would feel that I was giving her medical information just as I would in any other medical condition. You know, you can have antibiotics or you can have an incision and drainage of your abscess. I would say that these are the medical treatments that are available. These are the risks and benefits of those. So she knew, what if she was weighing options, what were the risks and benefits of each of those?
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I guess that brings me to another question. Suppose she does seek an abortion, unfortunately, and there is a case. Suppose because with my understanding of this bill, what it will allow folks to do is it allows anyone to make a claim or an accusation to the like. Would, after that first initial accusation of aiding and abetting, do you believe that would have a chilling effect on your profession and on you?
I can't speak for other physicians. I don't know. I'd have to be in a situation, I guess, take care of the person in front of me and give them care. And I quite honestly don't think about those things when I'm seeing someone in the ER. It doesn't enter my mind at all, really.
Understood. Well, I appreciate that. I do believe that it would have a chilling effect. I mean, maybe not initially, but there's certainly a lobby that would advocate for would advocate for this in a very dogmatic way. I'm sure of it. That said, it would likely have some on some folks, some providers. Do you think enough of this? Suppose that there was, that there was lawsuits from incalculable amount of lawsuits that were being devised. Do you believe that at some point that doctors, providers would just not even talk about it whatsoever?
I don't know. I
think
can't
that there
speak
would-
to the
sure.
future. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. So I think the threat of lawsuit at whim would definitely have a chilling effect. So I appreciate your testimony. Thank you.
We need to get her down. I will let you ask the question, but I'll just remind everyone, she's been answering questions for an hour, and what goes for one will go for all. Don't complain later.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm just saying, she's been up all night, and she's taken an hour's worth of questions. So I don't know where we want to end this, but there are other witnesses to be heard.
So let me just state this to Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the observation. And I did not realize she's been up all night, so I want to.
I did sleep 3 hours, but then I drove here from 2 hours away.
So I would want to express additional appreciation for her time. But she is extremely knowledgeable in this area. And it has been a learning experience for me, both listening to her and observing how she struggles with some of these issues. And so I just want everybody to know that we are not engaging in an exercise of futility in our questions. It's really an opportunity for us to learn. And so I just want to make that clear
That's
to all
fine.
members of the committee.
I understand. I just don't know where it's going to end, because I think she has answered as honestly and as fully as she can.
No question
But
about
we
it.
could keep asking questions all afternoon, and I'm trying to manage that so that we don't, because there's many other people yet to go. Senator Garrett, did you still want to ask?
Just briefly, first, thank you for being here. And like the Senator from Williamsburg, you have been extremely helpful to us. A couple of things. If we pass this and a diagnosable pregnancy is found, then no longer in South Carolina would abortion be one of your opportunities or one of the things that you would tell her that she could do. Is that correct? I mean, once you've diagnosed a pregnancy in South Carolina, you would not offer her to go get an abortion, would you?
As I said, I don't refer or perform abortions, but probably having the knowledge that may be something that some women might seek, I would talk to the patient about the risks and benefits of that procedure, just in terms of informing her about her health, and I would just want her to be aware, to have information.
But if it's clear that that's no longer allowed in South Carolina, that would not be one of the things that you would tell her that she could do. She would have to go to talk to someone else about that particular remedy.
Yeah, as a women's health provider, I would let her know that might be something that would be offered to her, whether, and I wouldn't, refer her, but because I've taken care of many of these women who have chosen that option and have had complications or side effects because of it, I want her to be informed about the potential consequences of that, the risks and benefits of that.
And if your legal team tells you that's not something that you can discuss with them, then you wouldn't do that.
If I was, informed by my hospital system, my employer, yes.
Okay. The other question I had very briefly is this. Every case is different. It seems like no matter what kind of an emergency, it can be a different emergency. But this law is written to give you authority to go beyond what's normal and regular, ectopic pregnancy, for example. So if you get yourself in a situation where you've got to save her life and you make that decision, then you feel like this statute covers you, protects you, as long as you follow.
From my reading of it, I do.
Okay.
I do.
So it's broad enough to protect you in case of a special emergency.
I do, and I would feel, if I was asked about that case, whether it be my hospital credentialing committee, we always do review of difficult cases. Peer review is an ongoing thing, and I've definitely done peer review cases. Like, we're going to present the medical facts, and I think, because of my level, my experience in the field, but I would feel like, what I did, I could support what I did clinically and provide rationale.
Well, thank you so much again for being with us today.
Thank you, sirs.
Senator, I have just one brief follow-up.
Senator from Orangeburg.
So under the scenario that the senator from Abbeville was just talking, and the senator from Sumter were asking you about, a woman who's, let's say a college student has come in, she's been raped, she's looking for options. You tell her the risks and benefits, but you tell her you cannot refer her, but she will not, she'll have to go somewhere else. So she goes to a woman's clinic in Charlotte, and in the intake, the woman at the desk says, "And who sent you here?" And she says, "Dr. Daggs." Then her dad finds out that she's had an abortion and subpoenas the records of the Charlotte Women's Clinic, and the referral form says, "Dr. Daggs." Do you understand you're going to be a defendant in that case?
I understand that, and I am confident in the way that I practice medicine and in the way, that I exercise my conscience in the practice of medicine, that I would deal with the consequences.
Right. So when that woman testifies in her deposition, why did you go to the Charlotte? Because I went to see Dr. Daggs, and she said I had to go somewhere else.
I guess I'd have to meet that situation if it occurred. I can't predict the future.
I hope you have a good lawyer. Thank you.
I'm married to one, just like you're married to a doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Daggs. All right. At this time, I think the next presenter is Mark Baumgartner.
Senators, good afternoon. My name is Mark Baumgartner. I'm the founder and executive director of A Moment of Hope, an outreach at the abortion clinic here in Columbia. Over the past 13 years, I've spent over 5,000 hours on the sidewalk in front of the abortion clinic. Collectively, my staff and volunteers have spent tens of thousands of hours offering practical help and hope to those arriving. Our method is to be kind and approachable, offering help in a winsome way. Many moms respond to this outreach of compassionate help and assistance. We are there for them, and that is our mission. We refrain from the use of bloody signs, judgmental language, and things like bullhorns that can be perceived as abrasive and stereotypical. We are not protesters. Instead, this is called sidewalk counseling, simply talking to the mothers arriving, curbside or car side at the driveway. We also operate a mobile ultrasound RV, staffed by licensed RNs and overseen by a board-certified OBGYN. For the mothers that change their minds and end up choosing life, we offer pregnancy care teams. These are groups of ladies or couples in local churches all around the state and beyond. To date, we have had nearly 100 pregnancy care teams supporting these moms. They walk alongside them for a year, throw them a baby shower, and mentor and disciple them. Prior to my present work, I was an airline pilot, a corporate pilot, and early in my career, a bank examiner with the Federal Reserve. I've been married to Carrie for 27 years. We have been blessed with 6 children, 2 of whom were adopted. I'm an elder at First Presbyterian Church here in downtown Columbia. Because of our unique ministry, I'm able to give you a boots-on-the-ground assessment of where we have come from and where we are today in regards to abortion. Over the past 13 years, A Moment of Hope has witnessed roughly 20,000 mothers arrive for abortion appointments. We keep meticulous records, as you can see in these boxes, which are filled with our daily tally cards. We have seen and heard a lot. We have seen the crying, the vomiting, the ambulances, the women leaving in wheelchairs. We have learned that the vast majority of women are not forced. We have learned that the women who choose life don't regret it, and they choose life the next time also. We have been pleasantly surprised when mothers that we have served tell their friends and family about us, and through word of mouth, we serve them also. Regularly, post-abortive people, both fathers and mothers, stop to thank us for our presence and tell us they wish someone had been there for them when they had come for an abortion decades ago. We have seen sad things like boyfriends crying in the parking lot, grieved that they have no say in the decision. Or the horrific things, like the time I witnessed a mom drag her daughter, maybe 12 years old, inside on an abortion day. The girl ran outside only to be dragged back in again twice. So heartbreaking. Another time, a tenant above the abortion suite came out and told me he was hearing screams of anguish coming from below. We wondered, should we call the police? We have had mothers on our ultrasound RV see their baby's heartbeat only to walk across the street and go in Planned Parenthood for the abortion. Did they claim an exception, or was something more nefarious going on? One observation is that ordinary people, the man or women on the street, think abortion is over in South Carolina. When people stop to ask what we are doing, many are surprised and say something like, "I thought abortion was outlawed." Last year, I even had an attorney at church come up to me and say, "What are you doing now that Roe's overturned?" In reality, Planned Parenthood is virtually as busy now as they were before the Dobbs decision and the overturning of Roe, even since the passage of the heartbeat law. By our own count, we are seeing nearly as many women show up on abortion days. Don't get me wrong, we are very thankful for the heartbeat law and the giant steps it has taken to save lives. However, we are being told that while inside, women beyond 6 weeks are being scheduled for abortions out of state. For instance, in Charlotte, just an hour and a half up the road, abortion is legal up to 12 weeks, and in some cases, 24 weeks. As a Christian, it is my calling to be kind and compassionate, especially to those hurting under duress or coercion. At the same time, as a Christian, it is my belief that abortion is a horrendous evil and is abhorrent to God. It is plainly spelled out in the 10 Commandments. The 6th commandment simply states, "Thou shalt not kill." Because of this, I am in support of the criminalization of abortion, as I am of other acts of murder. Aside from cases of duress, which are addressed in this bill, the notion that a mother isn't culpable when taking the life of the innocent child is in illogical position. To illustrate this fallacy that women aren't culpable except for those under duress or being forced, I would like to share some examples from our time at the abortion facility. Besides the most frequent one, which is being flipped off as the woman enters the door, I asked my staff to provide me with some of their examples, and I've included one of my own. Here they are. One day, as I offered a gift bag to a post-abortive client that was driving out, she sped by, yelling out the window, "We already killed it, yay!" Another woman told our staff to go F yourself and that she was glad.
Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck all of you. None of you. All fucking suck. Trying to control our bodies and our choices is fucked up.
Another woman told our staff to go F yourself and that she was glad she killed her baby. Another woman leaving yelled, "I love abortions." There have been multiple occasions where women have swerved their cars at us as if they were going to run us over. One time, a woman shocked us by doing a cartwheel in the parking lot while walking out of the clinic, as if to say, "See, abortion's no big deal." Another time, a mother referring to her 2 children in the back seat laughed and said, "I don't need another one," then went inside and killed their younger sibling. And finally, there's this one. Our staff was told by a client on her way out, "I've already killed my baby, I would do it again, and this wasn't the first time." Already killed her baby, would do it again, and this wasn't the first time. Do these women sound like victims? No, they knew exactly what they were doing, killing an innocent unborn child. For those moms and babies needing help in a difficult spot, we are there for them to help them get through it. But for those acting in such a high-handed way against the law of God, we need a threat of punishment to act as a deterrent. Finally, in conclusion, I direct your attention to the legislative findings in the current heartbeat law. In it, it says that South Carolina has a compelling interest. In it, South Carolina has a compelling interest from the outset of a woman's pregnancy in protecting the life of the unborn child. What an encouraging statement. But as I have shown you from these observations, we have a long way to go to live up to this. And you have been elected to help us get there. It has been my goal from day one to work myself out of a job. However, I have now come to realize this is unlikely without the passage of a law such as this. I urge each of you and the entire legislature to follow the lead of states like states of Texas, Mississippi, and Tennessee, where this ugly and evil scourge has been almost entirely eradicated. Thank you.
Are there questions for Mr. Baumgartner? Thank you, Mr. Baumgartner.
Thank you.
All right, the next presenter is Bill Gouch. If you would please come forward.
Greetings, Senators. My name is William Gouch, or Bill. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. I've lived there since 1967. My late wife of 47 years, her name Tommy, and I founded the Piedmont Women's Center. It's a pregnancy and medical resource center in Greenville. We founded it in 1991. It has been a haven of hope for over 111,000 women who have come through our doors. That's enough to fill the stadium at Death Valley and 4 Little John Coliseums. When we started that ministry, we were like this young man on the sidewalks trying to make them feel bad. We wanted to help them. And we finally found a little rental place next door to an abortion clinic, and we rented it. And the first day that we had it open, 7 girls came. They were turned out of the driveway by sweet ladies that tried to counsel like this fellow was talking about. They came in the center. We spoke to them about the decision that they had made, which was to have an abortion. And they got saved. They saved their babies. And we thought, this is wonderful. This is what we want. Nobody's yelling, nobody's screaming. We're just having a conversation. And we thought, well, this is great. So we started raising money and building this ministry. 111,000 women have come through our doors. My wife was the daughter of a deacon and a missions director. She was also Miss Loris, South Carolina. The first time I saw her was in 1972 at a fiddler's convention. She was hanging out with the Hells Angels. How did a Miss South Carolina princess become a biker chick with Hells Angels? How did that happen? And this is what she told me. Her misguided parents forced her into an abortion. And the following day afterwards, she received an acceptance letter from a home for unwed mothers. In tears, she said, "It was too late. I had killed my baby." She took responsibility. She didn't blame it on her folks, but she blamed the coercion on them. She told me that she wept in a fetal position for 2 days. She wept outside in the rain at Columbia College until she quit. She couldn't stand to have other people know what she had done, and she would weep in the rain so nobody would know. All she wanted to do was numb the pain, and that's where she ended up, with the Hells Angels. My perception of it was this: the grief and the shame that condemned her was not from breaking the laws of South Carolina. Her grief and condemnation was from a human being, from her being a human being and taking the life of a human being. She was tormented from breaking the law written in her heart, not by the church or the judges or the legislature, but by God. Gentlemen, this bill is the conscience of God. This bill is the conscience of God. Much is said here about the maximum penalty of 30 years as a deterrent, but it's curiously avoided that there is no minimum penalty ever mentioned here. There is no minimum penalty, correct, in this bill? Am I correct in that? There's a situation in Scripture where you've probably heard of King Solomon, supposedly the wisest man in history. And they try to bring a case to example how wise he really was. And it's the only thing we ever hear about how wise and judicious he was. And what was it? It was a domestic case about two prostitutes fighting over a baby as to whose baby it was. And the judgment, the faux judgment, was that that the baby be divided in half and given to each. But all of a sudden, the compassion of the real mother wins out, and she says, let her have the child. The compassion won out. And I just want to submit to you, the compassion's going to win out in any kind of a prosecution. It'll win out in the minimums, not in the maximums. It'll win out in the maximums when you find hardened criminals doing this and putting babies in jars and keeping them on the shelf in their weird clinics. There's where your maximums are going to fall in. But the deterrent to keep these children alive and to keep people from murdering them must be in place, or it's just going to continue. And if we don't deter it, if we don't restrain evil, we're enabling it, and it will continue, and it'll increase. We know that. We all know that. We know it in all the games we play, whether it's football or baseball. We know it in life. We know it in our own families with our own children. So Solomon had to make a decision. he had to decide what was best. Here's 2 prostitutes that he could have taken right outside and had stoned, but he didn't stone them, did he? You know why? Because his intention was compassion for this baby, and it would have orphaned the baby. He found it even better that this baby go live with his prostitute mother as an illegitimate child than it was for this child to be dead. We've got to reorient what we understand and mean by compassion. We've got to reorient, according to the conscience of God, what real compassion is, what real love is. We spent our lives building that ministry. We spent our fortune. We didn't have a fortune, but we lost everything doing that, and paid a high price for it. And it was worth it. And it's worth it to this young man. What did he forsake? What was that profession he had? Traffic controller or something? I don't know. I forgot what he said. Something important. To stand on the sidewalk and offer love and hope to people. So I just want you to take this into consideration. If we do not restrain evil, we enact.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions. You mentioned when talking about legislation, and I appreciate your passion and your beliefs, when you mentioned that this legislation is God's work. And so my question is, as a Christian, is it the duty, as you understand it, of Christians to encourage other people to follow the same beliefs and teachings, or is it the duty to make sure that we impose those beliefs on others, that they have to absolutely follow the same religion that Christians do? What's your understanding of that?
My understanding is when you look at history, especially biblical history, you see how God judges nations that commit certain things. There's 4 certain things that always brought it. Number 1, idolatry. Number 2, sexual promiscuity. Number 3 was the shedding of innocent blood. And number 4 was injustice. We are always, whether we're Christians or whether we're non-Christians, we've got to have a standard of justice that we live by.
But okay, so to that point, I agree.
Yes.
We have to have a standard of justice.
Yes.
Is it that the standard of justice has to be the way that you believe it in your Christianity? And the reason I ask that is because, regardless of the separation of church and state, but we do represent people who are not all Christians. There are people in my district who are probably atheists,
all
kinds of religions. And so it appears to me that while I respect your beliefs and your passion for it, it's almost as if this legislation is penalizing those who don't submit to those religious beliefs that you believe in.
Well,
is that not what
we all believe in thou shalt not murder? Whether we heard the thou in front of it, we all believe that that's a good thing.
Right. We also believe in not committing adultery and life.
Exactly. What kind of neighborhood do you want to live in? Yeah. Do you want to live in a neighborhood where the 10 Commandments are followed, or do you want to live in a neighborhood where they are violated? I'd rather live in a neighborhood where they're followed, because that's a secure neighborhood. That's a neighborhood my kids can ride their bicycles up and down the street without violations. And that's where I can leave my house unlocked or my car in the driveway unlocked. But those things are common among us as men. And this bill is just realizing, it's not extending it, it's not doing something special. It's just saying these kinds of laws apply to even the unborn. They are human among us. We have made them. They deserve the same kind of laws and justice that we expect. that we expect out of each other. It's fair. So that, regardless of whether you're Christian or not, those last 5 commandments, you know, we all want to live in a society like that.
We should. The idea that it seems, based on all that we've discussed here, that this is sort of punitive to those who don't share those beliefs. And I think that as Christians, I would imagine that if we love everybody, we would also respect their decisions to. All we can do is advocate and explain the teachings, and at the end of the day, we're not the judge, and we shall not cast judgment. But I just submit that to, you know, even with the work that you all do with the young women that you talk to on the sidewalk, and I think it's great, and it's beautiful that the ladies can talk to them and change their minds.
Amen.
And that's because you educated them and they had the option and the choice to do that. But there are people that they may not want to do that. They may, for whatever circumstances, the parent whose 13-year-old daughter was assaulted, they may really, I mean, they're going to get a felony because they decided to take their child to North Carolina. And so, because what they thought was right as parents and according to their beliefs and their teachings. And those same people could be counseled by their pastors and their ministers that tell them that, you know, whatever they tell them, and that God's going to be with you through this horrific incident. But I don't think we criminalize and punish people because they don't believe what we believe. And that's just what I wanted to submit. But I appreciate your advocacy and your passion.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gouch.
Thank you.
All right. This time, the next presenter is Jeannie Smith.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeannie Scott Smith, and my husband, Carter Smith, is standing with me. He's the co-founder of our organization. I'm currently the founder and president of Coastline Women's Center. This is a free medical clinic providing services to women facing unplanned pregnancies. Our clinic, on average, currently serves about 800 women a year, over 20% of the pregnancies in Horry County. It has also saved close to 1,000 babies from abortion since its conception over 14 years ago. I also founded Abigail's Place, which is a family resource center in which we come alongside the mother and child for 3 years, providing physical resources and education. Prior to this calling, I served my community in the healthcare field with a degree in physical therapy. I have authored several books, including my own personal story of abortion, and most recently, I have written and released abortion recovery curriculum to help women heal from the trauma of abortion. I have also served as the president of the South Carolina Association of Pregnancy Care Centers. My journey to leave my healthcare profession and start a pregnancy crisis center was spearheaded by a surrender to God after receiving healing from my own abortion. I wanted to prevent women from having to hurt and walk through the painful things that I had went through. I wanted to help them heal from the trauma it evokes and to be a voice for the most vulnerable, the unborn. What our culture has done has disregarded the mother-child relationship. It has diminished the gift of motherhood and somehow made everything about women and choices and exceptions and everything else but the unborn child. The injustice in all of this is that there is no justice and protection for the innocent unborn. As a society, we have failed to protect the unborn and give the unborn equal rights to life as you and I have. My statement today is to support the Unborn Child Protection Bill, SB 323, and I will be speaking from 3 points of reference as to why I support this bill. The first one is trauma. Abortion leaves deep wounds, particularly now with our greatest battle, the abortion pill. Surgical abortions may be decreasing from bills such as the heartbeat bill, but let's not be deceived. Abortions overall is increasing due to the unbelievable easy access of the abortion pill. Trauma has always been present with abortion, but in my 16 years of counseling post-abortive women, I have seen the trauma intensify, and here is the reason why. A woman taking the abortion pill, which is a chosen method today endures greater emotional hardship as they actually can see the fetal parts of the baby pass in the privacy of their home after administering the pills themselves. This intimate and participatory experience results in heightened trauma surpassing that associated with the abortion methods because they can no longer look to someone else as performing the abortion, but now instead look into the mirror of the abortionist every day. And that is the women's words that I counsel, not mine. For these reasons, there is more psychological trauma, and it becomes imperative to provide healing and recovery for the profound impact abortion is having on her mental health. There is also an increase of drugs, alcohol, sexual trauma, depression, pharmakia, and suicide. In my post-abortive healing programs, when asked, "What do you remember about the abortion?" my clients no longer say, "I remember a cold, unfriendly clinic." They now say, "I remember pushing the baby down the drain of the shower with my big toe." I have also been told that there is so much blood, my bathroom looked like a crime scene, and I saw my baby fall in the toilet. I have also counseled a 14-year-old girl and her parents who were traumatized after taking the abortion pill because the 14-year-old began hemorrhaging and the bathtub filled with blood. She could have died, and in fact, some do. To sum up my point regarding trauma, I will share with you a quote from Dr. Julius Vogel, a psychiatrist, obstetrician, and abortionist. Every woman, whatever her age, background, or sexuality, has a trauma at destroying a pregnancy. A level of humanness is touched. This is part of her own life. She destroys a pregnancy, she is destroying herself, and there is no way it can be harmless. It is totally beside the point whether or not you think a life is there. You cannot deny that something is being created and that this creation is physically happening. Abortion is not as harmless and casual an event as many insist. A psychological price is paid. It may be alienation, it may be pushing away from human warmth, perhaps a hardening of the maternal instinct. Something happens on the deeper level of a woman's consciousness when she destroys a pregnancy, and I know that as a psychiatrist. We need a law to prevent such traumas, and I believe SB 323 can begin to provide that. The second point is physical harm. Research confirms what I have seen firsthand. Today, women are being led and lied to the abortion pill and said that it is safe when in fact it is not. The counseling room tells a different story. Women are taking these pills at their own will, many under no doctor's care, to terminate their pregnancy. The Ethics and Public Policy Center performed the largest ever study of the abortion pill. It involved over 800,000 women. The study showed that following a chemical abortion, over 10% of women experienced sepsis, infection, hemorrhaging, or other serious life-threatening issues. That is, over 1 in 10 patients experience at least one serious adverse event. The president of the EPPC stated that the study is statistically equivalent to a Category 5 hurricane hitting the abortion industry. There needs to be laws to protect the health, emotionally, physically, and spiritual life of the woman and to ban all abortion. It must be a severe law that bears great consequences, as murder does, because laws produce behavior. They are there to protect and bring health to the society. Abortion does neither of these, and I know that personally. If there is an acknowledgement of the severity of abortion to both mother and child, behaviors will change. How we raise our children will change. Family culture will be restored. In essence, a bill like this will reform and bring life back to society. We teach our children they cannot drink and drive. They cannot rob a bank or murder because these are laws. Therefore, we can also teach our children that they cannot choose abortion, because this is law, and there are severe consequences to breaking such laws, and it should not be regulated but completely banned. We need something that makes women stop and think about what they are doing, because if there had been such a law in place, I would have never chose abortion. I would have saw it for what it was, murder, and I would have kept my baby. We must make abortion the unthinkable, and I believe SB 323 can be the turning point to both. The last point that I will make, the most important point, is the murder of the unborn. We must save the innocent, no matter the circumstances, from undeserving death. who he says he is or we don't. And he is a good, loving God. He created us all because he desires family, and he calls us sons and daughters. Every unborn child is created by God, a living being and soul, from the moment of conception, with their own DNA, characteristics, and purposes in life. But to go deeper, in Leviticus 18 and 20, God tells us, "Do not give any of your children to Moloch." He says, "We built high places to sacrifice those sons and daughters to Moloch, though I never commanded them to do that, nor it would enter my mind that they would do such a detestable thing." Moloch was a false god, a god of human sacrifice, particularly children, and he demanded the sacrifices of children to appease himself and make people's lives better. Does this sound familiar? Today, abortion choices are made mostly out of selfish ambition and to cover up sin. Today, our modern-day Moloch is abortion. There is a historical spirit of death behind abortion that is introduced to one's life once they choose it, death for both mother and child. Throughout the history of our time, blood has been associated with sacrifice, and abortion requires both. We are to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. That is the unborn. We are to ensure justice for those being crushed. That is the unborn. We are to speak up for those helpless and see that they get justice. That is the unborn. These are not my words, but King Solomon in Proverbs 31:8-9, known to be the wisest man, again, that ever lived. But these are common sense things, and we are all intelligent people here. So therefore, it is a spiritual battle that we are in. And the reason this final point is the most important point is because if it alone led our decision making, and it should, then the other 2 points I had to make would never exist. I believe SB 323 will protect the unborn, and I thank you for listening to my humble testimony. I do give my full support to it and any other bill that would ever ban abortion. God bless you in your decision making.
All right. Does anyone have a question for Ms. Smith? Thank you very much. The last presenter at this time is Dr. Matt Clark. Dr. Clark, there's 7 minutes left on the clock right now.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to be here and to speak with you. I'm Matt Clark. I want you to think of me as a Christian. The Lord saved me, and I didn't deserve it, and I'm grateful to have an opportunity to be here because of my love for the Lord. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And recently I've been thinking about the importance of us loving one another in our conversations, and the importance that we want to win the man, not the argument. And Wilberforce is known to have captured the hearts of his opponents. They applauded when the slave trade was outlawed, and they loved him. Even his opponents had their hearts warmed by his presence, and that's what it means to be human and to be made in God's image, and to obey that commandment to love your neighbor, even if they're sitting on the wrong side, and to enjoy one another. And we'd probably be able to sit down, Senator Hutto, and I don't know if you have a beer or whatever, and enjoy a good talk together as fellow South Carolinians and neighbors. And so one of the things that we're so committed to is restoring the civility of this conversation as fellow human beings. Because if I There's a miracle in my heart to truly love other human beings the way that Jesus calls us to love others, to listen and to really give attention to the words that are being spoken. And I think what I've observed here today is a reality that is summed up in this phrase, that we're dealing with a moral issue, not a political issue. And whenever we get into that, force our beliefs on others. No good Christian wants to do that. And yet we do have laws, and laws impose themselves on thieves and murderers, and we agree that we need to have that in our nation. And so, Personhood South Carolina, I'm the executive director. I'm also a physician. I've been practicing as a physician since 1995. I'm
board certified in pediatrics and allergy, asthma, and immunology. And I'm also a pastor of a church in Edgefield, South Carolina, Cornerstone Presbyterian Church. I've been ordained as a pastor since 2014, and my wife's been putting up with me for over 30 years, and we have 11 children, and our 3 youngest are adopted. And we really want to be a voice for every human being, not just for babies inside the womb. We want to say that all of the practical concerns that have been brought up about protecting good medical practice and leaving out contraceptives and IVF from this conversation, we want to say that's what we're after here. And all the good concerns, the practical concerns that have been brought up so far, if the language needs to be improved in those areas, fine. But the thing that's been so obvious is those practical considerations have been presented as reasons to reject the entire bill. So what we're looking at here is a moral difference, because the thing that we're dealing with is that abortion is legalized murder of innocent, defenseless children in our state. And it's occurring thousands of times per year in our state. And all of these practical considerations, we need to address them. But the reality is God created a world where pregnancy emergencies, pregnancy-related difficulties are very hard to sort through. It's really hard to write law that captures everything that really matters in this conversation. And we grant that. We want to find those good answers to that language that concerns the other side. But that doesn't change the reality of the foundational moral beliefs of our nation. Our Creator, the one true God, believed to be the God of the Bible, we are told granted us the inalienable right to life. And at that time when those words came into existence, English common law was practiced in our nation, and every single colony had abortion outlawed. Those words are referencing the God of the Bible, and the roots of our legal system, whether you're a Christian or not, come from that book, as does English common law. And so when we look to the laws that we make now and we search for the maxims that undergird those things, the answers are in our organic law. And in South Carolina, we're told in our Constitution at the opening phrase, I've got it written here, we the people of the state of South Carolina in convention assembled, grateful to God, grateful to who? Grateful to God for our liberties, do ordain and establish this Constitution. And so even if you're not a Christian, the laws that govern our nation and our state point to the Word of God as the foundational maxims that guide how you make good laws. And finally, the reality also is that we know that when we're finished with this life, the law by which we will be judged is the perfect law of God and His Word. And so whether you're a mom or a dad or a pastor or a doctor or whatever you are or a legislator, we all are going to be judged according to that word. That doesn't make us a theocracy. That doesn't make us someone who's forcing our beliefs on others. That simply causes us to submit to the foundations of law in our nation. And there's ways to do this that protect women. And we believe that abortion harms women. We have a fundamental disagreement on that the other side believes that abortion is good for women. And we sincerely believe that abortion harms women in every case. And so we want you to see that our heart is in the same place as yours in terms of wanting to do what's right for women and children. And in terms of the criminalization and the controversy on the right that's going on right now, and pro-life organizations fighting with one another about it, it's time to turn over that apple cart. It's time to have that conversation, and the evidence that's been presented here is very clear. To say that a woman is automatically a victim beforehand, before the case ever even happens, is clearly irrational, contrary to sound legal principles, and contrary to what it means to have a civil society. I could say more, but those are just off the top of my head from what I've seen so far today.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Are there any questions? Okay, Senator from Orangeburg.
Dr. Clark, thanks for being here. Be glad to go get a beer with you sometime. That'd be fine. The preamble you just quoted, you said grateful to God, but went on to say, for our liberties. And wouldn't that include the freedom that women enjoy to make decisions for themselves?
You know, Senator Hutto, I've been watching you question people for a long time. And I've never wanted to cross swords with you. I just want you to know that. But everybody's got to have their Thanos, but nobody wants to fight Thanos, right? So I'll draw swords with you today, but we'll have that beer some other time, okay? So the question is regarding the liberties that are referenced in the Constitution.
I'll just say liberty is another word for freedom. Freedom is what women of South Carolina want, is the freedom to make decisions, not the decision that Dr. Clark would make, but the decision that they would make.
Correct. And what you're referencing is a change in the beliefs of our nation, a moral shift that took place since the founding of our nation that does not grant the right to life or freedom to children inside the womb. And of course, if you start from that spot and you believe abortion is health care and we believe it's murder, there's going to be a significant disagreement about how you manage the liberties of the unborn versus the liberties of the woman. And we would say that God created the union between mother and child with perfect wisdom, and that there's never a situation where we have to sacrifice the liberty of one for another. We believe there's a way through that with wisdom and care for the mother and the child.
Well, I want to get back to just one other line of questioning. I follow up with what I was talking to Dr. Daggs about. So you're a pediatrician in Edgefield, so I assume that if you have a normal pediatric practice, you've had a chance to encounter pregnant teenagers who've come into your office, and while you don't actually do any procedures, you talk to the families about what their options are, right?
Well, let me clarify. I'm board certified in pediatrics and in allergy, and my practice is allergy, asthma, and immunology. So I don't deal with that clinical scenario now, but so that you can have fun with the question, yes, I have dealt with that situation in the past during my pediatrics training.
All right.
If I recall correctly.
I don't really want to have fun with the question. I'm trying to protect the practice of medicine, because I assume that when you were in pediatrics and you encountered that, you discussed it with the teenager and maybe with mom and dad in the room or out of the room, at some point they ask you what the options are. It may have been a pregnancy of rape or incest, or maybe not. But while you don't do abortions and maybe you don't refer for abortions, do you understand that that family may well have left your office and gone across the border to see a OBGYN in Augusta or Atlanta? And when they asked at the intake, how did you get here? And they said, Dr. Matt Clark's my doctor. He sent me over here. That you're now going to be a defendant in a lawsuit if those medical records are subpoenaed and you're down as the referring doctor?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with the premise of your argument, because in the current situation, if I do something illegal or if I refer someone to something illegal, I'm currently criminally liable for that if I do something illegal right now. And so the situation that you're describing, if I understand correctly, is a situation where I would be recommending something illegal or discussing something illegal.
I'm not even saying you recommended anything. I'm just saying that your patient left your office with the understanding that you could not help them.
Okay, so the situation, though, is that it's illegal. Is that the hypothetical situation? And it is now illegal to have that done. Is that correct?
Well, let's make the assumption that this bill passed.
Right. So that's the question I'm answering, is it would be illegal. And so the approach to dealing with someone asking me to perform a criminal act is far different than someone asking me about a medical procedure. And so that's the distinction that I referenced already. You see abortion as health care. I see it as the murder of an innocent child. And so that would not trouble me at all in that situation. I would just not tell them. I would not talk about, I would not bring up, I would not give them the option of committing a crime, because I know that that's to aid and abet a crime, like you do and like most people who live in the world know. You don't help people go find where they can commit a crime. So I guess that's my answer to your question. I hope that helps you see how I would handle that as a physician. It wouldn't trouble me at all because it's a criminal act at that point. I wouldn't talk about it.
You're missing my point. You're missing my point. The pregnant child, teenagers in your office, you don't say word one about abortion, okay? You just tell mom and dad that, whatever you're going to say, here's the avenues for adoption, here's the avenue you can have the child at home, and they leave your office. You hadn't said a word about abortion, but they decide on their own with other counselors or on their own to go over to Atlanta and pursue an abortion. And when the person at the desk of the OBGYN in Atlanta says, how did you get here? And they say, well, Dr. Matt Clark is my doctor, and that's who I talked to before I came. Now, your name, even though you didn't say a word, is in the chart of the OBGYN in Atlanta, and then the father of this child decides they're going to file a lawsuit under this bill, and they subpoenaed the records of the OBGYN in Atlanta. And in those records where it says referring physician, and even though it may be a mistake as far as you're concerned, the patient felt like you were her doctor, and she left your office and went to seek what she decided that she was going to do, and she put your name down.
Yeah, and I would put in my chart that the patient requested to break South Carolina law and murder an innocent child, and that I told them not to do it, and that would be in my medical record. And I'd be fine with that if the law tried to come after me then. I think that's exactly how I would handle it.
I'm not talking about the law coming after you. I'm talking about me coming after you. I'm talking about a lawyer coming after you.
Well, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. They could sue away. I mean, I imagine that if I put in my chart some language to make it clear that I warned them not to break the law,
Right.
and in fact, maybe I would just let them know I'm going to call the police and let them know what happened.
Well, you know what I'd do if I was you, I'd put it in the chart too. You can try to cover up best you can, right?
I mean, look, you're asking great questions, right? These are meaningful questions.
I'm trying to get you to understand that the criminalization of the practice of medicine is not a good idea.
Well, I would agree with those phrases, but we have different definitions of those words.
Senator from Williamsburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Clark, I just have a couple of questions for you. You mentioned, and you can correct me if I misquote you, that you believe this is not a political issue, but rather a moral issue.
I did say that, and I will obviously grant there are political elements to the discussion, but the foundational question is a moral question.
Well, believe it or not, I agree with the analysis that this is a moral issue, and because it's a moral issue, I remember some years ago when I was in law school, the question was raised as to whether or not you could legislate morality. And so we had an interesting discussion on the issue. But because I believe this is a moral issue, did you know that I think that we should not decide it? And I think that citizens of South Carolina should decide it. So I think it should be a ballot issue.
Sure.
Tell me your thought on that.
I appreciate you joining me in that conversation about it being a moral issue. I'll tell you, for me as a Christian, I draw my conclusions from the Scripture, and I believe that I can easily defend from Scripture the position that I hold, and that the moral position that I hold is based on a book, the Scriptures, the Bible, the Word of God, that has stood the test of time and that will stand the test of time, and that is never in any case going to mislead us. And so maybe you hold to the same standard. I don't know what your standard is, but if so, we have a different understanding of what that book teaches us about children inside the womb and whether they should be protected by law. And I do believe that book tells us very clearly that children inside the womb should be protected by law, and then that was laid out in the English common law, and then it was abortion was not allowed in every colony in the state at the time that the Constitution was ratified. And in 1883, in March of 1883, our state passed legislation that not only continued to state that abortion was illegal, but also had criminal penalties for the mother, but she could have immunity if she testified. So what I'm getting at is I believe that the moral standard that I use is the historical moral standard of our nation and of our state, and that there has been agreement on this question historically from that book on how it applies to our law, and that there was never any concerns about using the Word of God as a standard. We wouldn't know what murderers were. We wouldn't know what adulterers are, as we were talking about with Senator Tedder before. Thank you for what you said. We get our standard in the West from Christianity, and anyone who says otherwise doesn't understand the history of the West.
So two things. One, when you talk in terms of the 1800s and how abortion was illegal, but slavery was not, I have a difficult time reconciling when folks take me back there. And you perhaps might understand why.
Absolutely.
But let me go back to the question that I raised in terms of it being a moral issue. And because it's a moral issue, don't you agree with me that the citizens of South Carolina should decide it through the ballot? That was really my question.
I love that question. The moral issue, another way to bring up the moral issue is the question, who is God? Right? And now I don't mean like what religion do you serve?
But do you mind addressing the ballot?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Right. So who is God, I think, is the fundamental moral question here. And on the one hand, we have people who say God is the God of the Bible and has spoken and has already told us what to do on this question. And that we as human beings, if we want to be blessed and live in a society that is civil and good, we will follow what God tells us to do in His Word. So when we say that a woman gets to make her own choice, we're saying, first of all, that she can murder an innocent child. It isn't just a choice and it's not health care. We're also saying that she's God. We're agreeing that she gets to be God over the life of that child, Senator Saab. And if we send it to a ballot...
I would disagree with that.
Okay, well, it seems that way to me. It seems logically that way to me. And I think it's the same as true if we send it to the ballot. This is not up for a vote. Heaven has already voted. It is clear that babies...
But we're voting.
No, what I mean to say is the question should not be up for a vote. Okay? That's my point. That's an unalienable right. That's what the Declaration of Independence means. It is an inalienable right. It is not for men to vote on. And when men think they can vote on who gets life protected or not, they have made themselves God. Do you see that logic? That's what we're saying. And we've departed from that foundational logic upon which our nation was founded.
But we've got a fundamental issue before us. And so I pose the question to you based upon where we are. Not esoterically. And that's kind of how I categorize a lot of what you just said. So the fundamental question is, who votes? Does this group of men vote and decide the issue? Or is it a South Carolina issue? We are lawmakers.
Right. I really do think it's a good question. I don't mean to sound like I'm dodging the question. I do think it's a good question.
So the question then is, somebody's got to vote on it, right? And so ought it be the citizens of the state of South Carolina, or should it be these men?
It's my belief legally that the South Carolina Constitution and previous precedent already established the personhood of babies inside the womb, and that any kind of potential court case could be brought forward and end this conversation without a vote. That's my personal belief about where we are legally, not only from the federal Constitution, but from our state Constitution and from precedent that we have in our state acknowledging personhood. So I believe that is a path to end the killing of children in our state. Now, to answer your question, who gets to vote on it? Right now, obviously, the legislature has to vote on it, and the legislature may choose to pass it or not, amend it or not, or maybe kick it down the road to, like you say, a constitutional amendment vote. But my answer to that would be we need to understand that we've walked into ground that we've not been invited to. This question was already answered in heaven, bequeathed to us by our founders, placed in our Constitution, both state and federal, and it's already been answered. Sadly, we've rejected that, and now we have to deal with this. We've rejected the Western freedoms, the liberties that brought up by Senator Hutto by doing this to innocent children in our state and the nation.
So the answer to the question then is that you do not believe that the citizens of South Carolina ought to be the one to decide the issue.
I think it would be a grave philosophical mistake for us to think that this issue rests, the authority with this issue rests with any human being.
So then your other conclusion is that we ought not do it.
I think that you have a responsibility to erase prior iniquitous decrees that have denied the freedoms given to us in our Constitution.
You don't think the citizens should have the right to do it. You think we should have the right to do it.
I don't deny the power of the citizens given to us in the way that we can change our Constitution.
Or the other.
No, it's not one or the other. We are given those powers in our Constitution, and we can trigger that if we want to. I would argue against that as a wise path. That's what I'm saying. I think that would be...
So then the answer to my question, after we've gone through all of that colloquy, is that you don't believe that the citizen should be the one to decide the issue.
Correct. I would completely agree with that. But we do as citizens have to make our voices heard on behalf of the Lord. And if we are in a situation as citizens where the Lord's ways are being ignored and we have recourse through whether it be constitutional amendment or whether it be through legislative efforts or whether it be through efforts in the courts, we must go for that and make that happen. If we can, peacefully, civilly, you and I could get a beer sometime, whatever, as well. I mean, I want to make friends while I'm here, even though we're locking swords, okay?
Oh, look, I believe that we ought always be able to dialogue and in instances agree to disagree without becoming disagreeable. And so
Yeah, it's so important.
I've always functioned along those lines.
I've seen that. I've admired that.
Okay, Senator from Sumter, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple points and question. So first, very appreciate your testimony. Very well spoken, articulated.
I'm sorry. Excuse me, Senator from Sumter. There's only 23 seconds left on the clock.
Okay.
So.
Got you. Can I ask just a quick question?
If it's in.
It's very quick. Okay.
Very quick.
So the way I categorized your perception is that this bill is the will of God, but and though I have some empathy to that, do you think this is the will of the people of South Carolina?
I don't think I would characterize my position as the will of God on this bill. I think this bill has some parts where it can be improved, and I would be very hesitant to call anything written by men to be for sure the will of God. But to answer your question, I do think this would be pleasing to God if this bill passed. And politically right now, to look at the idea of moral versus political, I don't get the sense that the state of South Carolina politically supports necessarily all the elements in this particular bill right now. I don't know what the political polling would show right now. Taking protection back to clinically diagnosable pregnancy, protecting every child without exception, providing historically relevant and sound criminal sanctions for everyone involved with appropriate defense for duress and things of that nature. I don't know where the state stands on it, but I do have confidence that it is biblically sound and pleasing to the Lord. And I hope that the rest of the state will come to see that in due time.
Thank you.
Are y'all good? Okay. So thank you, Dr. Clark. This concludes the portion of the testimony for those advocating for the bill. We've been here now a little over an hour, or wait, 2.5 hours. Yeah, time flies. So I think maybe if I could receive a motion that we recede for a few minutes, it might be good. And then we will come back to hear from the expert testimony opposed to the bill.
Make a motion.
Have a motion from Senator Garrett, second. All those in favor, 5-minute break.